The best way to get better at programming is to practice. And in this example, we're going to fill up an array with some random numbers. As always, this file is available for download using the link in the description below. We'll pause for a few seconds, and then you can follow along with us. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So notice I have a constant on line 10. And this is because I can't get the value of an array by default. I have to know this value, so we often use a constant. Now you might be asking, well, why is that? Well, to loop through an array, we often use a for loop. So to make sure I get truly random values, I need to include time.h, then I'll say srand, that's to see my random number generator, time, and I pass in null. So I'm going to use the for loop like I mentioned before, for int I equals 0, I less than array size, I++. This for loop will allow us to loop through the size of the array, the number of elements. Now we just need to assign values to those elements. So I'm going to say values, that's the name of our array, use square brackets and I. This is how we get what we call the index of the array. This gives us the exact element inside the array that we're going to work with. I is a variable starting at 0, and your array is going to start at index of 0 and go up through 1 minus the size of the array, which is exactly what this for loop is doing. This is going to equal rand, give us a random value, and so we don't have crazy large numbers, we're going to say modulus 250. This is going to give us a value between 0 and 250. If I run this, you notice that something happens, but nothing that you can see. That's because all we did was assign those values. If I want to print them out, I'm going to need to do something similar. So I'm going to come down here and say for int I equals 0. Now you might say, well, didn't I already use the variable I? Yes, but I use it inside that for loop. And it's specific to that for loop. Because this is a different for loop, I can reuse I. I is going to be less than array size, I++. I'm going to say cout values at I. Do an end L. Now if I run this, I get 10 values there. Run this again, I get 10 different values because we're getting random numbers. You might ask, well, what happens if I want a bigger array? Well, because I have this const, I can come in here and say, you know what, I want a 25 element array. And because I use it for declaring it, as well as using it to size through to assign those values and then also print them out, that one change affects everywhere else. And that's one of the great things about using that constant value. So now if I run this, instead of getting 10 elements, I got 25. And all it took was one little change. So this is how we can use constants along with arrays, and now we can give arrays some values and loop through to print them out. It's a very simple process inside of C and C++. If you found this video helpful, please give the video a like and consider looking at other videos inside this series on how to get better at programming in C and C++.